Before we get into this video, I would like to apologize for my voice. Unfortunately, over the last couple of days, I have had a very sore throat, which has actually delayed the release of this video, and as you'll be able to hear, I am still not quite 100%, but nevertheless, I do hope you enjoy it. The time for Carlos Sainz to make a decision about his future is now. At the front of the grid, the seats are now basically confirmed, with Alonso, Perez, and now Stroll all staying at their respective teams. Now, even though I predicted and wanted for Sainz to go to Mercedes, if you saw my video from a few months ago, Toto Wolff in the build up to Canada all but confirmed that Sainz will not drive for them in 25, and even though I still think that there is a slight possibility that it could still happen because we don't know what's going to happen with Antonelli, the team has basically doubled down on Kimi in recent months, giving him an extensive test program with their old cars, and it seems now that any hope of Sainz still staying amongst the top teams is now gone. That now means that there is basically no point for Carlos to wait any longer, because all of the teams that still have seats available are also the teams that have Sainz as their #1 target. And as K-Mag pointed out, almost every single driver that currently is out of contract is now waiting for Sainz to make his decision, because Carlos at the moment is basically blocking the rest of the driver market, and until he decides where he's going to go, drivers like K-Mag, Bottas, Ocon and others are all left waiting to see what's going to be left. With Mercedes out the picture and RB also being off the table, that only leaves 4 possible landing spots for Carlos, which are Haas, Williams, Sauber and Alpine. And now, I'm going to be honest, all of those are terrible options, especially coming from Ferrari of all places, but that's just the cards that Sainz has been dealt. And so I'm going to go through each of these teams individually and talk about which I think is the best fit for Sainz going forward. Before we get into my thoughts, however, I was very interested to see what you thought. And so over on Twitter, I put up a poll asking which of those 4 teams you think Sainz should go to. After 1,565 votes, the results actually surprised me, because Williams had by far the biggest share of the votes, getting almost half with 48.4%, followed by Sauber and Alpine who were very closely matched, and then Haas getting only 1.5% of the vote. With that in mind, let's first up talk about Williams. James Vowles has done a lot right since joining the team last year to identify all of the key areas that need improvement within Williams, both on an operational level, organisation both trackside and back at the factory, and also on the infrastructure side as well, which definitely needs updating. For the foreseeable future, they'll continue to be a Mercedes customer until 2030, which I think brings a lot of stability and a good base level of competitiveness, as the Mercedes power unit has managed to win either a race or sprint race in every single season of the hybrid era. One thing that Carlos has definitely outlined as a major priority is immediate competitiveness, and this is perhaps where I think it gets a little bit tricky for Williams. And now, across the board, public opinion on all of these teams basically changes from race to race, because people put a huge emphasis on the previous results. Barcelona was a horrible race for Williams, where they were by far the slowest team on the grid, but then in Canada, Albon would have scored points had he not been taken out, ironically by Carlos Sainz. I don't think Carlos will simply make his decision based on a run of 3 or 4 races where things haven't gone Williams' way. Drivers always have to think 1 or 2 years in the future, and so the bigger question is this team already set up to be more consistently competitive in 25 and 26 compared to all of the other teams in contention? And I think more than their current form, this is what's going to give him the most doubt. Although Williams have shown the capability to develop a decent car as we saw last year, and in Alex Albon I think they have a really strong driver to pair up alongside Sainz, it just feels like even though James Vowles has done a great job in identifying all of the areas in which they are lacking, there is still too many fundamental improvements that need to be made on the infrastructure and manufacturing side before this team can even think of leading the midfield and doing what McLaren did by overtaking Mercedes despite being their customer. And next up, let's talk about Haas. And now, to be honest, this isn't even a remote possibility. In fact, despite what Toto said, basically taking Sainz off the table, I'd still give more of a chance of Sainz going to Mercedes than Haas, purely in terms of probability. I don't think Haas are even in a position to offer Sainz the kind of money that would tempt him to even go there in the first place, and they're only ever going to be a midfield team. Yes, they have had a good start to the season, but there is a reason why Hülkenberg decided to move to Sauber, even though Haas are still above them in the Constructors' Championship, and it's the same reason why Sainz won't even consider going there. Haas are more than capable of building a decent midfield car, but they're never going to have the people, resources, or infrastructure to challenge the teams at the front, or be anything but a midfield team. I just don't see this as compatible, and as much as I'm sure that they did reach out to Carlos and, hey, if you don't ask then you're never going to get, apart from maybe having the best car compared to the other three in 2025, I just don't really see any incentive for Carlos at this stage of his career that makes him even consider Haas as a serious option. No doubt the team that has been chasing Sainz the longest has been Sauber, who of course in 2026 will become Audi and will also become a factory team with their own power unit. The problem I've had with Sauber is that on paper, they seem like this incredible utopia where in the future they're going to have incredible funding from the VW group, world-class facilities with Audi expanding their engine program, and of course at the heart of everything is the combination of a multiple-time race winner like Carlos Sainz with his own factory team. However, despite all of that, putting an Audi badge on a Sauber and combining that with an unproven power unit from a manufacturer who has never been in Formula 1 before doesn't solve the fact that right now, this team is terrible. The fact is that their recent record has been a massive disappointment given their facilities in Switzerland and the relatively good funding that they've had from Alfa Romeo. And now in 2024 with Audi on the horizon, just at the point where you would think that they would really try to get their act together to prove how much potential they have going forward. And not only do they have on average the worst car on the grid, but on an operational side, the team is still a total disaster, sabotaging their own drivers. I mean, I think we all thought that their early season pit stop debacle was now over. But then just a few races ago in Canada, Zhou received yet another 40-second pit stop. With Sauber/Audi so far, there has been a lot of hypotheticals, and I think that's my biggest worry. There is a lot of good people there, and I really like the acquisition of Hülkenberg, but there is no tangible proof yet on track where it really matters that this team is even progressing. If anything, they have been comfortably the worst team on the grid from a performance and operational level. Trying to sell that to Carlos Sainz can't be easy. But the one thing that they do have in their corner is that they can give him the money that he deserves and also the long-term contract that he wants as well. It all comes down to what Carlos Sainz thinks Audi are capable of as a brand new manufacturer, because to seriously expect them to even be podium contenders in 2 or 3 years' time, let alone even mentioning things like wins in championships, is ambitious at best. The last team which has now played its way into the conversation is Alpine. And now we know that Ocon is out at the end of this season, and as I'm recording this, Gasly has just been announced on a multi-year deal. And now Alpine is its own brand of chaos because there is both reasons to want to go there and lots of reasons to never want to go there. Despite their atrocious start to the season with their car being overweight, the team has been able to add performance and get it back to a much more respectable level. Had it not been for their crash in Monaco, I think that there's a very good chance that Alpine could have scored points with both of their drivers in the last 3 races. As it stands, the team has vaulted up the standings with back-to-back double points finishes and now sits just 7th in the constructors' standings, only behind RB. With Flavio Briatore also joining the team, whatever you think of him, we know his job is going to be to get deals over the line, and potentially signing Carlos Sainz is going to be the #1 priority on his list. Having said that, the list of problems at Alpine could almost be its own video. As an organisation, this has been the most unstable team for years, with loads of different driver lineups, multiple team principals being hired and fired, ex-employees coming out and openly talking about the lack of ambition, and even just a few weeks ago, rumours that despite being a factory team, that they're thinking of ditching their own power unit to voluntarily become a customer team. Or whether Carlos even wants to jump into and be a part of the Alpine drama is difficult to say. But as strange as it sounds, if I was him, Alpine is the team that I would go to, even though as I was signing the contract, I'd probably be crying whilst doing so. My reasoning is that when it comes to Williams or Sauber, I just don't think Sainz is going to be around for long enough for those teams to become competitive. I think Carlos's number one priority should be to stay as relevant as possible to the top teams, with the aim of hopefully signing for one of them in the next year or two. If you're running around at the back of the grid in a car that is barely able to score points, regardless of how good of a driver you are, the top teams will quickly forget about you. Therefore, I think Alpine is his best bet right now. Not because I think that it's the best long-term home for him where he'll be for the next 3 or 4 years, but because, at least compared to the other teams, they have proven that they can still deliver a solid midfield car, and it also allows him to bide his time and wait for potentially an Aston Martin or Red Bull seat to open up in a couple of years' time. The downside of this strategy is that it doesn't offer him any long-term stability, and it also means that he's going to have to gamble that in a couple of years' time that there will be seats up for grabs in the top teams, and that his stock as a driver will still be high enough to make him a contender. The truth is that all of these teams are basically rubbish. I mean, it's literally a choice between the 4 worst teams in Formula 1 right now, but unfortunately, that's just the hand that he's been dealt. Begrudgingly, I would go with Alpine due to their short-term competitiveness and also financial incentives that they can offer Carlos as well. But now, it's over to you in the comments, and more importantly, it's over to the man himself. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.